Hello, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for taking the time to join us today to have what I hope is an interesting and enjoyable discussion with Nick and Lucy around what sustainable success looks like on their farm, also with a few points of view thrown in from me. Um, but before I introduce Nick and Lucy and Rianne Price, who's going to co-host with me today, I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about Germinal and what we are and what we do, just in case there are people amongst the audience who haven't come into contact with Germinal in the past. Um, we are we are a sixth generation family owned business, just over 200 years old. We operate directly in GB and Ireland, where we sell grass and clovers and forage mixtures to merchants. We don't sell direct to farmers at all. We do a lot of research work, a lot of trial work with farmers, but we only deal with the forage or the merchant trade. And we sell our grasses and clovers. We have working partnerships with over 25 countries around the world. We are seed specialists providing market leading solutions both in agriculture but also in the amenity sector. And innovation is really what we do. It's our strength, really. The grass and forage products that we bring to the market all come through our excellent research and plant breeding division, which is called Germinal Horizon. And the technologies that German Horizon develop not only offer sustainable benefits in the face of climate challenges, but also in terms of high performance in things like yield, but also in terms of the quality of the products once they're inside the animal, how they're the digestibility of them once they're inside the stock. So the obvious example of this would be high sugar grass. This is something we've been selling for a number of years now. So not only are the grasses in the high sugar grass range the highest yielding on the independently tested recommended list, but they also produce more water-soluble carbohydrates, so more sugar in the leaf. That energy allows the rumen to produce more microbial protein, the bacteria that attacks the forages, which in turn then means we can get more volatile fatty acids out of the rumen to produce more meat and milk. That obviously has a commercial benefit for the farmer because we're getting quicker live weight gains or more milk production, but also it's got a benefit for the environment because by capturing that protein from the forages and using it for meat and milk, there is less going out the back end of the animal in terms of feces and urine. So we're getting less ammonia out the back, less nitrogen out the back, and because of the increased growth rate in the meat, in the live weight gain, the time to slaughter is reduced. Therefore, is less methane produced as well. So that's an example of what German Horizon brings to us and what we bring to the market. Rianne Price is a graduate of Cardiff University, where she got a degree in newspaper journalism. She grew up on her South Wales farm, and your first 10 years of career, Rianne, was with Farmers Weekly, where she progressed from reporter to livestock editor, and now is a freelance journalist and PR consultant, and is a partner in your family firm. So thank you for joining us and help hosting this. And then Nick and Lucy. Nick and Lucy run Kingsplay Farming in Wiltshire. 400 Holstein Friesian dairy cows using robots and finish our Wagyu sired dairy beef. There's 250 hectares there of diverse grassland across multiple soil types, and it is multiple soil types, and 400-hectare arable enterprise. And I'm very pleased to say that in 2024, Nick and Lucy won the Farmers Weekly Mixed Farmer of the Year award. So belated congratulations to you for that. So what we're going to cover today, there's going to be a presentation from Nick and Lucy about the farm, the mission statement, the farm history, the setup, and also about the forages that they're producing and how they're doing it with a view to the sustainable elements that they are incorporating, animal performance and the forage crops that they're using. So I think now, without any more ado, I'll hand over to Nick and Lucy. Okay, so over to you guys.
Okay, well, hello to everybody, and thank you to Ben and Rian for organising today and inviting us to come and speak. I'll kick things off a little bit, and then Lucy will take over later on, talking a bit more about the sustainability, the soils, and some of the things that Ben talked about earlier. So the mission statement of our business, you can all see on the screen there. This mission statement has evolved over the years. High health and welfare has always been a priority of ours. We are RSPCA assured on the dairy and the beef businesses, and we try to produce as much quality Wagyu beef and milk as we possibly can, as well as cereals. From a sustainability point of view, we are leaf mark assured, which we opted to do 2 years ago. Another audit coming up shortly, and obviously red tractor assured, the same as most farmers. An efficiency side of it, we're very keen on lean management, and that's the way we're trying to push the business to make things as slick and lean as possible. So we can go on to the next slide, please, Ben. This is a little bit of the history of the business to give you an idea. We were established in 1934 by my grandfather. So last year was our 90th anniversary. Grandfather began milking 35 cows in the village on a rented farm. Then my father joined him and built numbers up with a secondary herd in the 70s. And then I came back mid 90s, and we had an ambition to merge the herds, build a greenfield site unit, which we did, to milk 500 cows on a sort of Californian American style with a rotary flood wash, housed and whatever. Now, as things have evolved, that system's changed slightly. But going on from there, in 2017, my father passed away, and Lucy, my wife, who we'll be speaking shortly. She was on the scene as a vet, helping local practice and doing some consultancy work. She joined me in running the business to move things forward, which enabled us to get a aligned contract on the milk and push the health and welfare further. So we can go to the next slide, please, again, Ben. Give you an idea of the business today, Ben touched on earlier, we're farming 850 hectares with about 350 as combinable crops, wheat, winter wheat, spring barley. We've dropped rape out of it now. And then on the grassland side, with 250 hectares, and again, Lucy will go into more detail on this shortly, with calcareous grassland, herbal lays, legume fallow, a complete mixture all the way through. We then have about 170 hectares of maize and 75 hectares of biodiversity, which again, we'll talk about a little bit further. The idea of the combinable crops is 50% of all the cereals that we grow end up back in the animals one way or another. All the straw stays on the farm. The remaining cereals are sold out in the open market. And the benefit of that is all starch in post-weaning rations on the farm, with the exception of the nuts now going into the robots, is homegrown, which is something we're quite proud of. That helps reduce our carbon footprint and also helps reduce our exposure to the feed markets and the supply and delivery issues that we've seen in the past, especially over COVID and war times. So as I mentioned, the organic matter stays, all the straw stays on the farm, helping organic matter. All the bedding goes back on the land. So our organic matters on our cereals are good on all our soils across the farm, with the exception of some straight sand that we farm. So the diverse grassland system we've got is due to various soil types. We've got different requirements for the animals at different stages. And again, Lucy will touch on that a little bit later. The other alternative forage crops we looked at, we grow some forage rye for dry cow feed, brilliant early dry cow and transition ration feed, as well as triticale, which we tried last year when we couldn't get the rye in time. Talking about the dairy herd, so we dropped actually from 500 cows to 400 cows last year and put 7 Lely robots in. The idea behind that really was partly sustainability, to reduce cow numbers, reduce emissions, but increase milk yield. And we've seen a yield increase from 28 litres a cow up to 40 litres a cow, which has been phenomenal, more than we expected. And the cows have settled in really well, really happy, and it's better for the staff and their working hours and lifestyle as well. So that change happened. We've also got 350 dairy replacements on the ground, which we keep a surplus, which at the moment the surplus is too high, partly because of the reduction in cow numbers, but also with the risk of TB, we're under restriction at the moment, and we've been under restriction for 20 years in the last 25 years. So we need to make sure we have enough animals that then gives us the biosecurity control and the closed herd status that we really want to ensure that health and welfare status. We're split seasonal calving, so we calve in the spring for 2.5 months and again in the autumn for 2.5 months, which we start with sexed Holstein, then everything else is served to Wagyu. And the idea of that is it gives us the opportunity to focus on the calvings, on the fertility and the AIing at the times that we need to, but it also gives the calf pens rest to try and help calf health and gives the guys a break from the monotony of calving all year round. We graze the milking cows and the dairy replacements, and the building is fitted with fans and mattresses and yeah, everything the cows need, and rubber flooring going in at the moment to enhance comfort. Just a quick bit on the beef. So mentioned we got 400 F1 Wagyus now, all homebred, all reared and finished on the farm, aim to finish at 24 to 26 months. We genomic test them for all the traits that we want, the growth rates, the marble score, the eye muscle size, and the feeding score that we get from that. So I'll let you take over.
Great, thank you. Okay, Ben, if you want to move on. So Nick's given you an overview of the business as it is today. This slide, I guess, is just sort of showing how we've changed the business over the years. So traditionally, going back 10 years ago, the business was very focused on the dairy side, and we realized that that sort of left us quite open, that if we had a bad year on the dairy, it was, tricky from a sort of resilience point of view. So since then, we've almost sort of developed the arable and beef sides to make it a much more evenly balanced mixed farming business. So now the three enterprises sit sort of side by side, working well together. And we're also quite conscious that by being a mixed farm, we're at an advantage in that we can sort of use the dairy to breed the beef, and we can use feed that potentially we might not want to feed the dairy cows, but is suitable for beef cattle. The arable crops can be used to feed the dairy and beef. Farmyard manure and slurry goes back on the arable. So we try and smartly integrate the three enterprises just to be able to sort of maximize our efficiency and profitability. And then also sitting side by side with those are the environmental land management schemes as well, which we're really committed to making sure that we achieve the scheme objectives, and hopefully enhance and conserve the countryside for future generations. If you want to move to the next one, please, Ben. So like Nick mentioned, we've got a diverse mix of grassland, and we've also got variation in soil types and also animal requirements when you're looking at the difference between, say, like a young beef animal versus a high yielding milking cow. So there is quite a bit of juggling with the grassland, and actually Ben has been particularly helpful here. He's sort of helped us to make sure that what we're growing and where we're growing it and what we're using it for is right. So for us, a single approach won't work. And we're essentially matching the grassland to the nutritional requirements of the animals grazing it or being fed silage from it. So as far as grazing goes, we've got lowland calcareous grassland. You'll see there's a hill in the picture in the middle there. And that's Kingsplay Hill. It's a triple SI and it's got some wonderful calcareous grassland. There's no input on that. You wouldn't want to put young animals on it, but it's absolutely brilliant for dry cows, in-calf heifers, and second year Wagyu. So those ones tend to go there. And then with the arable enterprise, we've got those opportunities to use grassland as break crops on the arable. So traditionally, we would have just used ryegrass. Now we're using a mixture of mixed species herbal leys, which give us the benefits of diversity, the high root depths, the long root depths, the fact that they're more drought resistant, which we're seeing more and more as a result of climate change. So yeah, we find those really good for young stock, and also the natural and helminthic properties that they offer as well. And then we range from those to moving on to the ryegrasses where we've stitched in clover to reduce nitrogen requirements and also trying to increase homegrown protein. So we've got perennial ryegrass with white clover on our milking cow grazing, and then we've also got perennial ryegrass with red clover on our silage pastures. When it comes to the silage, we use a multi-cut system. If we can get the silage right, then that makes it a lot easier for the nutrition of the cows later on. So we are careful with our attention to detail. You've only got the one chance really to get it right. We used to use a forage box. We now use a self-propelled forage harvester. A big part of that is with the climate change, the changing weather conditions, the weather windows that we often have to experience. We find that we need to get in there and get the silage off quick, and the self-propelled forage harvester gives us that opportunity. With our multi-cut system, we're aiming for about 4 cuts a season, mowing every 28 days. And that makes sure that we're getting the good quality grass. We're using high sugar grass like Ben mentioned, which means we're then getting better sort of preservation of the silage in the clamps. And we're also really conscious about minimizing waste. So that's really making sure that that clamp is really well consolidated, sealed. And then when you open it up, make sure that you've got the right management at the face of the clamp. I think our greatest challenge to grassland management, which I've sort of alluded to, is the weather with the extreme weather conditions. In an ideal world, we'd turn out in March and we'd graze through till sort of September. But the last couple of years, we've really struggled because we've had a lot of wet weather and it just hasn't been feasible to turn out that early. And then we found that by the time the weather gets better, the grass is then much longer. And then you're in this dilemma of whether you turn the cows out onto the suboptimal grass or whether you wait until silage making and delay turn out even longer. So I think it is a challenge, and it's probably only going to become more challenging. And that also ties in with finding an appropriate window for silage making. And, do you go when you've got that window, or do you allow the grass a little bit longer and risk losing that window? Okay, Ben, if you want to move on. Um, I think with all these things, whatever grass seed you buy or any other seed you buy, if you haven't got good soil health, then you're not going to get the most out of those seeds that you are buying. So we're trying to work hard to improve our soil health. We're sort of taking the regenerative farming approach, the 5 principles of regeneration. So we're going for the diversity and the break crops in the arable, especially with these herbal lays. And I think the deeper rooting herbal lays should break up the soil naturally, so hopefully improve our soil structure. We're protecting the soil surface. All of our spring cropping have cover crops in ahead of when we drill in the spring. We're maintaining the living roots through the herbal and ryegrass lays within the arable rotation, minimizing soil disturbance. So historically, many years ago, we would have been there like everyone else with the plough, and now we're doing a lot more min till. If we don't need to disturb the soil, we won't. And then obviously the advantage of being a mixed farming business is we have got the animals that we can integrate as well into the system, which I think is really important. Other things we're looking at is conserving and building up soil organic matter. So principles of regeneration will do this anyway, but we're also looking at sort of targeted application of farmyard manure on particular fields that we think we want our soil organic matter to be higher on. Reducing compaction. So again, considering the weather conditions, looking at when the crops that we're planting are likely to be need to be harvested, and is the soil type of that field going to be is it going to be okay to harvest should the weather change? So we are quite mindful when we're doing our sort of crop planning on. And then minimizing the risk of soil erosion and improving soil carbon sequestration are the other 2 things that we're working on when it comes to soil management. We do soil testing with soil. We've taken a bit of a sort of staged approach. So on our arable fields, we'll do a more detailed soil analysis, and then we'll do then also sort of like, I guess, a medium approach on our sort of grassland, and then on our permanent pasture, we're doing a sort of very basic approach. And then we're using that testing to make the most of our nutrient management. And I think that's me done.
We've already had quite a few questions coming in, so maybe I'll kick off with those and we can answer some of those before we move on. So one question is, what multi-species are you using? So what kind of mix have you got there?
So an example mix would be one that I got in front of me here because I don't remember all the ingredients otherwise. So it's got the perennial ryegrasses, some late diploids, intermediate diploids, sorry, late tetraploids, Timothy cocksfoot, tall fescue, white and red clover, trefloid, plantain, chicory, and going on from these, we mentioned about the drought tolerance. We got 330-acre mixed species fields underneath the downland that we were running the first year grazing wagoos on last summer. They were the only green fields on the farm. When you're up on the top of the hill, the downland would have burnt if you dropped a match on it. It was that dry. In 50 years of farming here, I've never seen it that dry. Yet those mixed species lays were still green, still growing. We put a bit of nitrogen on early doors just to get them going in March, and we didn't put anything else on them for the rest of the season. And they kept 120 wagoos for the season up until October when we brought them in.
I
And
think that
sorry, Lucy,
I was
I was
going to
just going
say
to ask.
that nitrogen is a really important thing. So if we're looking at reducing our carbon footprint, you reducing artificial fertilizer use by including the clovers on the other nitrogen fixating legumes in those herbal lays really helps with that.
Yeah.
Mhm. So how much nitrogen would you have put on in the spring then? Because I understand, Ben, that is one thing that if you're using clovers or herbal lays, they do need that kick start in the spring, don't they?
Yeah, so the legume factor of those mixtures, I remember rightly, Nick, that was a SAM3 mixture in the
That's correct.
SFI scheme, wasn't it? And those legumes will only start to work and fix nitrogen when soil temperatures get 8 degrees C or above. So they are slower in the spring, which is why the practice of putting nitrogen on early doors to get the grass to have a bit of oomph is really important. The one thing I would say, and I think you guys are doing it, is please be brave and don't use nitrogen in the summer. Because if you keep using nitrogen, the legumes themselves, they're quite lazy fixers. If you keep using nitrogen, they're not going to bother fixing their own. So it's sometimes a bit of a risk to, or not risk, but it's sometimes a bit of a against your reaction to normally do it. But as I think you're doing is use it in the spring and then not afterwards.
Absolutely.
But it's interesting that we're hearing this a lot, that in the drought situation, these multi-species are better than the perennials. One question for you on the back of that is the perennial ryegrass mixtures that then were a bit slower in that drought period and stopped growing because the plant shuts down. Have they come back when the moisture event comes, when the rain does come? Do they come back?
Well, 2 years ago, Ben, we did a fifth cut in October and we made some clamp silage with that. It was too wet to bale. It was some pretty heavy, stodgy stuff. And we're feeding that out currently, actually, because we're tight on forage, like a lot of people, and it's some pretty stinky, not very well fermented, poor quality forage. This year we did, in 2025, we did it after the terrible growing season we had with the drought. We made some in October, and that's analysed out as good as our second cut. And the milking cows are on that now, achieving, well, they're on 38 and a half, 39 litres today with that heavy grass-based ration going in there. So there was definitely a notice last year. It must be a case, and you're the expert on this, Ben, but if you don't take those cuts early doors, it holds the nutrients in there for a later cut to hold that quality.
I think that's what happened. I think the fert you put on and the nutrients that are there in the soil in that drought period, the grass stops respiring and the perennial ryegrass naturally shuts down quicker than the other legumes and grasses in your multi-species sward. But then it is there once that rain event comes. Great to hear that your multi-species survived your wagyu herd during that period, but then you've got that grass come back for quality cut once you get that rain. And that's what the perennial is very good at. We often get the perennial slated quite a lot because it doesn't grow in drought, in droughty times. It doesn't, but it shuts down, but it does come back into life again very quickly afterwards.
Yeah, the overall tons harvested last year, even with the drought on grass, wasn't massively different from the year before. It was just the timings that were different.
And that's something that I think we're going to have to get used to as farmers, thinking about you'd think about your winter and you'd plan your forage stock for your winter without any, that's just part of what you do. I'm thinking that we're going to, use these multi-species lays, use the different innovations that are coming through, but also have forage reserved for that drought period. We don't know when that drought period is going to come, and you may not get one. But at least if you've got it in your head that there's going to be one, you've got some stock reserved for the feed, supplementary feeding in that period.
So going back to the nitrogen then, so how much are you applying to your herbal A's in the springtime?
It was about 40 units.
Okay. And has incorporating red clover and white clover into your silage and grass lays, has that helped reduce your nitrogen as well?
Yeah, it has, and we do field by field because we can get the umbilical to some fields which we pump on in the spring. So those fields will obviously get a reduction in there, and we're actually meeting with the agronomists after this webinar today to start planning this year's nutrient requirement. And then, the fields that we're aiming to cut early in 10th, 15th of April, they get less on them. We'll only put one dose on them, but the fields that we're grazing may have a second dose. So we look at every single field individually, depending on the mix, the purpose, the requirement. And also with our milk contract, we have different fertilizers that we have to use. We also use some of the Corteva product, and we the Blue N. So our nutrient management is a headache. It's a big spreadsheet.
Mhm.
But overall, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've reduced N purchases by about 25-30% over the farm.
Right. And that would be across the arable as well then?
Across the whole farm, yeah.
Wow. And another question that's come in, has the inclusion of red clover in silage lays improved the performance of the cows?
I think that's probably quite a tricky one to answer when we've switched from a sort of the rotary parlour to a robotic milking system. So if we say we'd put some in this year and then we'd gone and cut it, or we'd started feeding it, we changed to a robot system in August, and we've seen a yield increase from 27.5 up to at peak we've seen them hit 40 plus litres. I think I'm not sure whether it would necessarily cause a yield increase. Where the reason we're putting it in is to try and increase our homegrown protein. So what we're then hoping is that we can reduce the amount of protein we're buying in.
Yeah.
So that's our driver behind it, and as well as reducing the nitrogen that we're putting on it.
Yeah. And has that materialized? Are you able to lower the amount of concentrate you're purchasing?
Yeah, our feed rate at the moment is the lowest we've been on for a long time, partly due to the dilution, but partly due to the quality of the forage. And Heffin, many of you know Heffin Richards, who does our nutrition. He's been praising the grass silage the last 2 years. It's definitely been a lot better than the past. And I think the change, Lucy mentioned the change to the self-propelled. When we used to have the forage box, the difficulty with that machine was with the area away from the dairy or grassland, the time it used to take to bring all that grass in, the dry matters were so variable. The chop length then became variable when the blades were starting to get blunt, and then the consolidation became challenging. To be able to just go in there and smash 150 acres in an afternoon and conceal it, do it properly, that gives you the consistency. And with a one group TMR, you need consistency in that clamp all the way through. You want the same product day in, day out.
And that's the beauty of the multi-cut system, in that whatever cut you're on in the year, you're producing that leafy sward into that silage pit. So as you work back the pit, everything that your TMR is taking is the same consistency as the time before, and you're not having that first cut quality silage and then perhaps stemmier second or third cut mixed in with it. The red clover is an interesting one in what you're doing the multi-cut with a conventional silage system. The red clover is perhaps a little bit more in tune, because the red clover is taking 5 or 6 weeks to come back to full maturity, which is what your cutting is. But with the multi-cut bit, you're getting the benefit of the red clover. We're just not perhaps hitting the heights of the yield of it. But I still think, like you said, Lucy, the benefit in terms of the protein that's going into the animal from that red clover will be massive. And just remember on that, the analyzing of red clover swards or any high protein swards is more difficult to achieve from NIR. And what I suspect you'll find is that it feeds a lot better than it analyzes. But it's part and parcel of it. And obviously the benefits from the environment and the sustainability point of view are huge, not only with the animal performance, but with the lack of the fertilizer you're going to use and the soil structure that it brings.
Staying on the multi-cut theme, how are you measuring your yields, both for silage yields and your grazing yields?
So I'll be honest, we don't plate meter the grazing plots this year. We used to do it, but the silage yields we monitor more through the forage harvester, so we get weights off of that, and then we verify it with the clamp measurement, and then we put that into FeedLink, and we can see from the FeedLink system how our stocks are running, so we can plan our feed use going forward. So that's the way we manage that. But just one point going back a little bit to what Ben was saying on the clover mixes and the mixed species, if I put my arable hat on, the benefit we haven't seen yet is that as a break. And break crops on an arable system at the moment are a massive challenge, and most arable farmers' worst nightmare. We took up our first mixed species lay this autumn and put wheat in behind it, and that piece of wheat looks really good. And it'd be exciting when that gets to harvest to see the return the other side of it as well. So I just thought I'd add that one in.
And
One,
and your
can I just, sorry, Iran, can I just, one of the other questions is about the establishment of herbal lays and the persistency of them, which is what you've just touched on there. In your situation, these are a break crop in your arable rotation, so you're only looking for 3, 4 years out of them. I think to be fair with herbal lays, it is a challenge to get them to last much longer than that. The herbs that we're using, have not been bred for hundreds of years the same way that we have bred grass seeds. So we are now breeding plantains and other herbs to try and progress the longevity of them. But it is a fair point that those things are, short term. In your rotation, in your system, it's perfect because you go back into the arable. But if you're doing it on a pure dairy farm, be aware that those herbs aren't going to last you much more than 3 or 4 years. And what I would do on that situation is keep the content of perennial up so that if the herbs die out, then we've got more perennial ryegrass there after that event.
And another question we've been asked is, how do you find it to establish the herbal lays? And have you, well, I think Ben's addressed the persistency issue there, but yeah, maybe if you can just talk us through the establishment of your herbal lays.
What we try and do is we plan it a year ahead. So the fields that would be going into it will be going into triticale, rye, or potentially whole crop, so that we get that crop removed early doors. So it would be coming off in June, which then gives us a lovely entry into a mixed species in August. I think, and Ben's the expert on this, we aim to get it in August, get it away, get it established. We don't leave it too late. Get a clean seed bed, and we would just do a light cultivation and then use a Vadestat drill to drill it in. We don't cross drill it, we just do a single drill, and consolidate with the roller, and that's it. And obviously you're limited with herbicide, well, you can't really because of all the species in there. So yeah, it's important to make sure it's clean, make sure it's early, and make sure it's consolidated so you don't get the slugs.
And your system's changed quite drastically in the last sort of 6 months because you've moved to the robots. How are you going to manage your dairy cows at grass this season?
I'll let you take that one.
That is a very good question. So we've got the robot system. When the cow goes to the robot system will then push the cow out. Basically, she will go out and she then has the choice whether she goes out and does what she wants to do or she comes back in. We've got what's called a graze away gate coming, which then you can have two different groups of cows go out and they come to this gate and it can then apparently split them back into their own individual groups. Now, I can't hand on heart say that this is going to work, but I'm really hoping it does. I think the main thing is we still believe that grazing the milking cows is right, and even with the robot system, we will try. We're not sort of chasing the cows to get them through the robots, and we're finding they tend to go themselves. And generally speaking, we wouldn't start fetching cows until they're kind of 15 hours since they were last milked. So I guess the idea is hopefully they'll come back in. They do seem to like coming in the robots, and I think when they want a bit more of the concentrate in the robot, they'll probably come back in, and hopefully it'll all work well. The grazing paddocks aren't very far from the robots, so they don't have to walk too far to get to and from, which I think will also help.
So will they just go out once a day, and will you run like an ABC type of system, or like, how are you going to split your platform out?
So they should be able to. So it'll be turned on that they'll go out. The robot can turn out depending. So if you've got a fresh cow, she obviously won't be going straight out. The robot system will be able to allow some access that are allowed out and some aren't, and then you'll have that set for, say maybe 12 hours. The beauty being that if the weather is really warm, you could potentially switch that 12 hours to nighttime. So they could go out at night. You haven't got that sort of worry about needing to get a whole herd in to be milked at 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's our plan at the moment, but obviously we might have to adapt it, and until we actually sort of do it, which will be in a couple of months, as long as the weather dries up, then we'll sort of hopefully just wait and see and hope it'll work out.
And are you finding that you're using less wormer because when you're grazing the multi-species lays?
Definitely.
Yeah, and I think not so much even just multi-species layers, but clean grazing. So we operate a traffic light system when it comes to grazing, where we've got our green pastures, which are clean pastures, not grazed previously. And that's the beauty of the arable break crops. You have that luxury. Then we've got our amber pastures, which will be something that was grazed, say, the previous year, but um, has didn't have any problems on it. And then we've got our red pastures, which are our problem pastures, which we know we don't want to be putting young animals on. So our young animals, first season grazers, will go out onto green pastures early on in the season. As the season progresses, they'll move to the amber pastures. And then the older second grazers will go onto the red pastures, and that will then clean those pastures up as they ingest any worms that might be there and their immune systems destroy them. So we don't routinely use wormer. We'll carry out fecal egg counts throughout the season. We're quite passionate about our dung beetles here, so we will try and avoid it at all costs. And if we do have to go for a wormer, then we'll go for sort of a white drench. But we haven't had to worm while the animals have been out grazing last season, have we?
For a number of years now.
We did a housing dose because we had a group with lungworm, but other than that, we didn't worm out grazing, and we are really quite committed not to do that because the dung beetles are such an important part of our
It,
farm
it's
system.
it's good to hear that in practice. There's a lot of work done by Professor Tommy Boland at University College Dublin on multi-species and the effect on the animal. And one of the major things he finds is that the anthelmintic properties of these herbs is reducing the worming, again on fecal egg counts up to 400 eggs, and by as much as half is reducing the amount of worm as much as half. So another question here on this same topic is, have you noticed as much production? And I know I've got my answers on this. Have you noticed as much production from the multi-species lays from your other grass lays? Is there any difference between it? Have you suffered a penalty, or is there more?
Do you
So,
mean production as
Yeah.
in growth rates,
As
or
no, as in
amount
yield
of
from the amount of
yield of
grazing
grass?
days, or the yield from the yeah.
definitely the mixed species lays, I would have said, as a grazing platform for young stock would out yield some of the conventional lays that we've had in the past,
Yeah.
without a doubt, mainly due to their drought stress and the longevity and the fact that it's consistent and it just keeps coming. I
So
would have said.
again, that's good. We had a 3 year trial at German Horizon on the multi-species, and in every one of those 3 years, and in that 3 years, there was a horrific drought year of 22. But in every single scenario, the multi-species lays outperformed in terms of yield of dry matter the straight perennial ryegrass, even to the point of just putting white clover in. That still outperforms the pure perennial ryegrass in those years. So it's not right for every farm, every field on the farm, but doing what you're doing and selecting your ground and selecting where you want that, and the livestock that goes onto it is all about maxing your requirement to what you can produce. Yeah,
Absolutely. And the Wagyus that were out there last season, we didn't supplementary feed them at all. Not until later on in September time, we had to put some bales out there because they were grazing it down. But from a concentrate point of view, we didn't supplement them at all, and they still hit the growth rates. So it definitely provides what the nutrition they need at that age.
good, good.
So tell us a little bit about the beef enterprise then, and kind of what made you go into the Wagyus and how are they managed?
So probably an unhealthy obsession with barbecues, really. And
From
quality
his
meat.
side, from my side, they're easy carving, so it gives the dairy cows a really good start to the lactation if they can have an easy carving experience, and also better for the calf as well. So I think it was a combination of the two. And they fit well with our system. They fit well with the heifers. We rear them with the replacement heifers up till the heifers are bulling age, and you don't get that competition you'd get if you would say put Belgian blue calves in with heifers. They don't. They seem to get on well. There's no sort of stealing of milk and things, and they seem to thrive together. So they just fit our system. They're not for everyone, but they work for us.
So how long have you been doing the Wagyu now?
7 years, but the last 3 years was 3 years ago. We went 100% Wagyu semen as our beef breed. So we just do the first block with the sexed Holstein, and then everything else gets Wagyu. So we're aiming to finish 200 a year, certainly the next 2 years. And
And
if our
stepping
replacement,
up.
yeah, hopefully step up to 250 a year going on as our replacement rate hopefully reduces a little bit with the cow numbers coming down a bit. And with the rubber flooring going in and the robots, hopefully we can reduce replacement rate overall a bit more.
I think as well, we one of our biggest challenges with carbon footprint and sort of replacements is we have to breed a surplus of replacements to cover for TB because we're shut down with TB, so we have to make sure that we've almost got that buffer there. We're a closed herd. We don't want to end up having to buy in, so we always end up having more replacements than we really need, which then means that you end up with cows being moved out probably sooner than we would do if we didn't. But fingers crossed, we're on. I think we've got some IRs to test in a month's time or something, and then hopefully we might be clear again.
But as far as the
Yeah.
closed herd status goes, even to the point that we don't buy bulls, we bought some embryos, full blood Wagyus to have a breeding stock of bulls for ourselves that didn't carry a risk.
Mhm. And so are you grazing them for 2 seasons and then finishing them?
Depends when they're born. So yes, the majority would have 2 seasons, but if they happen to hit with the spring and autumn blocks, if they just happen to hit a certain point, they might only have 1 season. But the aim is most of them will get 2 seasons. They'll be turned out from sort of, well,
Depending on
anywhere.
April,
Yeah,
April
April, and
through
then through
October.
through till October, and then finish when we finish them, we house them for the last 3 months, and that's when you're feeding them the finishing diet.
Yeah. So what kind of daily live weights are you getting from them while they're at grass?
Well, we're finishing them at say 24 to 26 months, and carcass weights are anything from 340 up to 400. So not dissimilar to some of the conventional beef breeds, to be honest, because you're starting with a smaller birth weight. You'd be
Mhm.
30, 35 on the heifers, 35, 40 on the males. So we're achieving the growth rates. And like I say, we push them hard to start with, the same as we would the heifers. So they're on 1.2 kilos of milk powder, ad lib concentrate nuts up until the nuts finish at about 3 to 4 to 5 months, where we start blending in a TMR. If they're still housed, if not, they'll be going out and then getting fed out in the field. But then they're pretty steady over the next 15 months, grazing, simple TMR over the winter, the first season, but then they're on a higher starch finish and ration, which hopefully encourages that marbling and the final finish.
And are you selling them direct?
Some direct under our own brand, the King's Play Wagyu, some local farm shops, and then retailers as well.
Mhm.
Brilliant. Brianna, it's 45 minutes now. I think I'm going to ask you one last question, guys. It's probably the biggest question that we've had today. What are the next big steps for the business in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh
You can
dear.
take that one.
I think at the moment
Holiday.
that might have just opened a whole can of worms for me to talk about agroforestry bed. For so I think at the moment we're really concentrating on trying to future-proof the business against climate change. So we're looking at ways of adaptation. We've done quite a lot of work with the Great Western Community Forest. So we've done some agroforestry planting. We're looking at making sure that we've got grazing, we've got shade in our grazing areas because it's going to take 10 to 15 years for these trees to grow. And in 10 years, we know that the climate could be a degree higher potentially. And what we don't want to do is find ourselves in a position in 10 years' time where we can't make use of our grassland for grazing, because it's something that we're keen to carry on with. So I guess, yeah, that's probably our big steps is making sure that we're ready for the future.
Good. Thank you. Well, just to not really wrap up, but just to talk about from Germinal's point of view, the range that we have developed and are now selling to farm or to merchants and on to farm. The climate smart range is all about the different ideas and the different concepts that you've heard here. The innovations that are coming through from Germinal Horizon will all go into this range. And this range is really about sustainability in the environment, but also about production. All of the high sugar grass is in the Climate Smart Clean range. So that's all about the environment and the reduction in ammonia and nitrous oxide that we've talked about. Each one of these categories, these 5 categories, has a range of mixtures in them. So there'll be a short-term mixture, a medium-term mixture, a long-term cutting, a long-term grazing, a long-term dual purpose, either with or without clover. If you wanted all of that production from the high sugar grasses, but you were wanting to think about the soil support or the microbiology in the soil, then you'd pick a mixture out of the Thrive range. If you were interested in the environment or in terms of some of the characteristics in terms of drought, perhaps, or some thinner ground, then you'd have a mixture out of the Adapt range. If you were looking to use more legumes in your lays to reduce your fertilizer bill still further, then you'd have something out of the Capture range, which would have a higher percentage of legumes in it. And the Restore range is all of the environmental mixtures, whether the SFI comes back and in what form it comes back. That's where that will be. So those are available through our merchants, through the trade, or you can contact us direct, and we will put an order if we get one through any of our merchants. So I think it just remains to me to say thank you to Nick and Lucy. Thank you very much for giving us your time and your expertise and your opinions. And Rianne, thank you very much for coming along and co-hosting that and asking those questions. I do appreciate it all. And that's it. Just thank you very much, guys, for coming and being there. And thank you to the audience for attending. So thank you very much, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye, everyone.